At exactly the moment when Wall Street is supposed to make sense, when algorithms hum, analysts argue, and chance is disguised as probability, one man appeared who seemed to treat the future like a cheat sheet. His name, according to police records and later media reports, was Andrew Carlssin. And for a brief, surreal moment in the early 2000s, he allegedly turned the stock market into a personal ATM, transforming a modest investment into hundreds of millions of dollars with an accuracy so precise that it rattled federal authorities. And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished. What follows is not a confirmed tale of time travel. There is no verified proof that Andrew Carlssin stepped out of the year 2256 or memorized tomorrow's headlines. But the story surrounding him, how it emerged, why it spread, and what it reveals about our relationship with money, fate, and belief, has become one of the most enduring modern internet mysteries. Because whether Carlssin was a fraud, a myth, or something stranger, the question remains the same. What would it look like if someone really did know the future and slipped up just once? The story usually begins in December 2002. According to widely circulated accounts, a man named Andrew Carlssin was arrested by federal authorities after executing a series of stock trades so successful that they defied statistical plausibility. Starting with an investment of just $800, Carlssin allegedly turned that sum into more than $350 million in a matter of weeks. Not over years, not with insider connections, but through more than 100 trades, each one profitable. In the world of finance, luck happens. Even extraordinary luck happens. But perfect luck, sustained, repeatable, and immune to volatility, is something else entirely. Investigators reportedly noticed that Carlssin never made a losing trade, not one. Every stock he touched rose at exactly the right time. Every exit was perfectly timed before downturns. Even high-risk, obscure investments behaved as if they were following a script only he could see. According to the legend, authorities suspected insider trading. That would have been the most rational explanation. Someone with advanced knowledge of mergers, earnings reports, or geopolitical events could theoretically replicate this pattern. But there was a problem. There was no paper trail, no phone calls, no emails, no known associates, no links to financial institutions, corporate executives, or political insiders. And when questioned, Carlssin allegedly offered an explanation that made the room go silent. He claimed he was a time traveler. Specifically, he said he came from the year 2256. At this point, any reasonable investigator would assume they were dealing with either a delusional suspect or someone attempting an elaborate distraction. And to be clear, there is no verified court transcript or official FBI document confirming that Carlssin made this claim under oath. But according to repeated retellings of the story, Carlssin didn't just assert that he was from the future. He allegedly backed it up with disturbing confidence. He reportedly named future events. He spoke about long-term economic collapses. He referenced technologies that did not yet exist. And he allegedly offered to provide the locations of future terrorist attacks and the cure for AIDS in exchange for his freedom. This is where the story crosses from strange into surreal. Because if this was a con, it was a bold one. And if it was a delusion, it was remarkably specific. Authorities, according to the narrative, refused the deal. Carlssin was jailed while the case was investigated further. And then something happened that pushed the story into full conspiracy territory. Andrew Carlssin disappeared. No dramatic jailbreak. No shootout. No official release announcement. He was simply gone. Some versions of the story claim he was bailed out by an unknown benefactor who posted an impossibly high bond. Others suggest paperwork anomalies, sealed records, or quiet intervention by intelligence agencies. None of these claims have been independently verified. And this is where responsible storytelling matters. Because while the Andrew Carlssin tale has been repeated across forums, videos, and blogs for years, its origins trace back not to a major newspaper, but to a tabloid-style publication known for sensational stories. That doesn't automatically make it false, but it does mean we have to slow down. There is no public arrest record easily accessible under his name. No verified court case. No official confirmation from federal agencies. In other words, the story exists, but the paper trail does not. So why does it refuse to die? Part of the answer lies in timing. The early 2000s were a period of deep uncertainty. The dot-com bubble had burst. September 11th had reshaped global politics. Trust in institutions, financial and governmental, was already fraying. In that environment, a story about a man who beat the system by knowing the future wasn't just entertaining. It was emotionally satisfying. It suggested that the chaos had rules, that the madness had a pattern, that someone somewhere knew what was coming next. And perhaps more importantly, it suggested that the system could be outsmarted. But the story also taps into something older. Time travel is one of humanity's most persistent fantasies. Not because we want flying cars or futuristic cities, but because we want certainty. We want to know which choices matter, which risks pay off, which disasters can be avoided. Andrew Carlssin, real or not, represents a figure who possessed that certainty and paid for it. Some believers argue that the absence of evidence is itself evidence. If a genuine time traveler were caught, they argue, of course the records would disappear. Of course the case would be buried. Governments suppress information all the time, they say. Critics respond that this logic is unfalsifiable. Any lack of proof becomes proof of a cover-up. And once you accept that premise, any story, no matter how thin, can survive indefinitely. Others take a middle ground. Some suggest Andrew Carlssin may have been a composite character, an exaggerated retelling of a real trader who used illegal but mundane methods. Or a fictional story designed to critique insider trading, wealth inequality, or blind faith in markets. There's also the possibility that the story evolved the way urban legends often do, starting as a small anecdote, gaining details with each retelling until it became something far larger than its source. After all, the name Andrew Carlssin doesn't appear in financial history books, but it does appear in countless online discussions, often with new details added years after the fact. And yet, there's one detail that keeps people talking: the trading pattern. Even seasoned traders admit that achieving a 100% success rate across dozens of trades is not just unlikely, it's effectively impossible without advanced knowledge. Markets react to randomness, to human emotion, to black swan events, unless someone already knew the outcomes. But knowing the future presents its own paradoxes. If Carlssin truly came from the year 2256, why risk exposure for money? Why not make fewer trades? Why draw attention at all? Some theorists argue that greed or curiosity gave him away. Others suggest that his actions may have been constrained, that he was attempting to test the limits of changing the past. Or maybe, if you're more skeptical, the answer is simpler. Maybe the story survives because it doesn't need to be true. It functions as a modern myth, a cautionary tale about hubris, a fantasy about control, a reminder that when systems become too complex, we start looking for supernatural explanations. And the disappearance, that might be the most telling part, because unresolved endings are powerful. If Carlssin had gone to trial and been convicted of fraud, the story would have ended. If he had been exposed as a liar, interest would have faded. But he didn't. He vanished into ambiguity. And ambiguity is fertile ground. Today, Andrew Carlssin lives on in forums, videos, and late-night conversations. Each retelling tweaks the details. Each narrator emphasizes different clues. Each audience member fills in the gaps with their own beliefs. Was he a hoax born from a tabloid headline? A misunderstood trader whose story spiraled out of control? Or something else entirely? There is no definitive proof, only interpretations. And perhaps that's the point. The story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. If someone did know the future, would we believe them? Or would we dismiss them until it was too late? If perfect prediction appeared in a world built on uncertainty, would we celebrate it or imprison it? And how many extraordinary stories do we reject simply because they challenge the rules we're comfortable with? Andrew Carlssin may not have been a time traveler, but the fact that his story continues to travel through time, through culture, through belief, says something important about us. We are haunted by the future. We want to peek behind the curtain. We want assurance that the chaos makes sense. And sometimes we want to believe that someone, somewhere, has already seen how it all turns out. So the next time you hear a story that sounds impossible, ask yourself not just whether it's true, but why you want it to be. Because mysteries don't survive on evidence alone. They survive on imagination. And if you want to keep exploring the strange stories that live in the space between fact and belief, stay with us and watch our next video.